If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, to be led by Councilman O'Connor.
Please place your right hand over your heart, please. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just reminding myself that I should ask you since it's approaching Veterans Day. So, November meeting is yours. Welcome. We will call this meeting to order, and we have our public hearing to consider the adoption of the 2023 operating budget and the 2023 capital budget. I'd ask the town clerk to please read the hearing notice.
Notice is hereby given that the preliminary operating and capital budgets of the town of Islip for fiscal year beginning January 1, 2023 have been completed and filed in the office of the town clerk at Islip Town Hall. Further notice is hereby given that the town board of the town of Islip held a public hearing at 10:30 on the 10th day of November 2022 to consider adopting the 2023 operating and capital budgets. Further notice is hereby given that the town board may consider any other matter lawfully before it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So here we are. It was a fast year, actually. In presenting an operating budget and a capital budget, it's a long, arduous process. The goals, obviously, not to pierce the cap and to minimize the impact to our taxpayers and retain staff and services. And together with the cooperation of the town board, we have been able to establish a very strong budget process. Began in June, when the departments had to bring their requests forward and justify their requests and meet with the controller and the team and literally go line by line by line. Then in September, I guess, we had the preliminary budget posted and on display with the town clerk in the town clerk's office. We have been able to maintain our commitment to good fiscal stewardship for our residents, despite the overall 8% national inflationary rate. We've been able to present a budget that is tax cap compliant. The overall tax levy of the town was basically flat from 22 to 23. And yes, the 23 budget was a challenge for sure because of the inflationary costs, the rising costs for fuel and diesel and supply chain issues and everything that everybody out there has to contend with. Balancing these increases and the mandated costs and not having any impact on taxes certainly is a challenge. And above all, we want a budget that's responsible. We did our best to keep the increase as nominal as possible, given the fact that, as I said, the inflationary costs were over 7%, close to 8%. The increase to the average homeowner will be $36 for the year. So revenue rising mortgage borrowing, the mortgage rates were 3%, they went to 7.5%. So what does that mean for us? It means that we have decreased revenue in the mortgage tax line. And, but we were helped, so how we were able to get here, we were helped by the fact that there was a decrease in the amount of the levy needed for the garbage district, which went down about $3 million. And the flip side of the rising rates, on one hand, helped us because when we began the year, the interest rate that we were getting on our funds that were deposited was 0.1, 0.1%. And now those rates are hovering about 4%. And we've been very diligent about, watching the rates and making banks compete with one another. The budget that we're presenting here today retains employees and services. It continues to maintain those services our residents, have come to enjoy, expect. Our seniors, our golf centers, our golf courses, summer camps, tennis courts, pickleball courts we've been adding. So we are Also dedicated to continuing to improve our infrastructure, the roads, the marinas and docks. We finally are addressing flooding issues, actually putting money in the budget for drainage. And with the number of parks and buildings we have, it really is a tremendous task. And our commissioners, our staff does an incredible job in helping us keep the place that we call home, the place that we love, affordable. We're also adding public safety staff. Public safety has been an issue in the public, and we are cognizant of that and making sure we have the appropriate amount of rangers and also code enforcement. The other issue that we're adding to the budget is IT. And, you know, we've been very fortunate. Our IT department has been very, very diligent. And it's annoying sometimes, but it seems like we're constantly changing passwords, but it is so important. And we've got insurances in place and everything, and had we been hacked, we could have handled it. But we're going to make sure that we're even more diligent in that respect, because as we can see, the impact that it has had on the residents, not just, you know, those that deal with the county, but it has trickled down to all of us and to businesses too. So we don't ever want to be contributing to that kind of inconvenience to anybody. So basically, you know, that's where we're at. We, as a town board, are very sensitive to the fact that people choose to live here in the town for the wonderful quality of life, but we are committed to making sure that we keep it as affordable as possible despite the challenges. With that, I would ask, since there are no cards, no one's filled a card to speak. I was going through this little thing because I thought maybe some stragglers would come in, but absent that, I'd ask the controller to come forward so that if there are any specific questions or concerns that the town board has, or if you could give a more kind of controller-like overview of what we have before us today. Oh, come on, it's a microphone.
I'm not that intelligent. Joseph Ludwig, Controller for the Town of Islip, 401 Main Street. Good morning, Madam Supervisor, members of the Town Board. Before we get into the budget, Councilwoman Mullen, a little bittersweet today, our last time of doing this, but congratulations on your election. And good luck in the next phase of your life. For the rest of us who are going to be around, there's not much more to say as usual, Madam Supervisor, because you kind of wrap it all up very nicely and take away everything I was going to say. I practiced all night in front of the mirror last night, and I was ready, and now I got nothing to really add. You kind of hit all the high points. It is a tax cap compliant budget, which is always the first and foremost thing we look at. The tax number is the most sensitive number within this budget. It's also the last number that gets put into the budget. And we look at every other option in every other area to either cut an expense, increase a revenue, ideally both, and what we're left with is the tax levy. You know, Madam Supervisor, you said this was a fast year. I don't know that the rest of us would see it as a fast year as much as it was a challenging year, a confusing year, and the ups and downs of everything we've had to pay for between starting the year off, gas being low, then it went way high, then it started to come back down again, then it started to go back up again. Trying to craft a budget under these circumstances is almost impossible because we have no idea what's going to happen. We have to do the best that we can in talking to the commissioners, and again, I'm glad you gave them credit, and they do deserve a lot of the credit because they have to go through everything and find out, okay, what have we been paying, what are we going to do, what new initiatives do we want to do? And then they have to come to me and ask for that permission, and I love saying no. Because the no's is what keeps the tax levy as low as we can possibly keep it. But understanding, I can't say no to everything. We still have to take care of the infrastructure. We still have to take care of our employees. And when you factor all that in, the 23 budget was an extremely challenging one, but one I think we did do a good job with. You made a great point about the mortgage tax and everything with the county. And because of the hack, I usually get monthly mortgage tax numbers. And I believe for the month of August, which is probably the tail end of the really good interest rates, call it $1 million. The county had their snafu mid-September, so I don't know how much of September they were able to give me, but it was on a handwritten piece of paper, and it was about $125,000. Now, the county systems, I believe, are still down. There may be a catch-up at some point in the future to make up for the mortgages that did get closed and will get on mortgage tax, but we don't know what that number is going to be. We looked at mortgage tax rates yesterday. The average for New York, if your credit score was 800 or higher, at a $400,000 home for a 30-year fixed rate was 7.6%.
Oh, dear.
Not to brag, I just bought a house last December. I got 3%. So we can see in just a very short period of time, because of the inflation factors, how things have so drastically stepped up. You did mention that the interest rates, at the next town boarding, the December town board meeting, we're going to have a resolution to add on another depository. They're the ones who are floating that potential 4%, and they wouldn't be surprised if they got to 5% next year, is what they put in their email, which to me, I have not seen 5% interest rates on a bank, 15 years ago, if not more. So it is an extremely bizarre world right now on every aspect and every facet. And we just kind of came up with the budget. It's a very status quo budget. Again, it's a kind of a boring budget, no great new initiatives. But again, we didn't cut anything. We did the best we could to retain all the services and to make sure that what we've been doing for the last couple of years, we can continue to do going forward. And that's basically the budget that you guys have in front of you. I shouldn't say guys, sorry, that's politically incorrect. That's what you folks have in front of you. And that's really what's up for adoption today. It is like I said, as reasonable as we could get it to be and as realistic as it could possibly be based on the information we had in August and September. We pray and we cross our fingers that things are not going to change for the worse. Hopefully they will change for the better. When it comes to the interest rates and talking to the economists and the bankers that I have to deal with, which is painful. But when you talk to them, I can always ask them, hey guys, what are you hearing? Oh, there's going to be another interest rate increase in December. Are you kidding me? Then the plan is it should slow down come 2023, potentially those rates starting to roll back, which will then help us. I don't have that crystal ball. If any of you have it, please send it down my way because I would love to see if that's how it's going to work out. Again, we kind of do the best that we can with the limited information that we have, and we really kind of, in this case, we really are kind of crossing our fingers that some of our numbers were correct and accurate. If not, we'll have to adjust on the fly in 2023. But for now, I think we're safe and I think we're comfortable. That might be the 100,000-foot view instead of the 50,000-foot view, but you took my 50,000-foot view, Madam Supervisor, so I had to go a little higher. I am glad you did mention the IT additions. Those were approved by this board at the October meeting. We amended the preliminary budget. And Steve Cozen and his staff really do deserve a lot of credit, even before everything at the county that happened. Found out after the fact. He tested my department. He sent out a phishing email to see who in my office was going to click on it, who in my office was going to let them know something didn't look right about this email. It was sent by them, so there was no bad things that were going to happen, but it was a good indication. Half my staff didn't look at it. Yay! Only 2 of us actually let IT know. So that was a great learning curve. If we don't like something, let them know. They do a great job of paying attention to all this stuff, and we did put in additional security measures to make the ability for someone to crack into our system that much harder. So again, Steve and his team do deserve a lot of that credit. It is an ever-changing world. We're a government. People think we are loaded with money, which we're not. They love to tap into us to steal stuff because it's just fun. So again, a lot of credit goes to Steve and his staff for making sure we do stay safe.
Joe, thank you for mentioning that especially. It really, really is so important, and it's kind of a wake-up call for all of us to be vigilant with emails and everything, and if something just doesn't look right, don't open it, you know. There was one.
I don't mean to cut you, more importantly, let IT know.
Yes.
Forward them that email, because they can block it if it comes from, or they can look into it to see if it was nefarious, or maybe it was just a vendor that used a different email. And Steve, please correct me if I got that wrong, but forward it to the IT team, and they can do what they need to do. It's not just about us not opening that email. Let them know that something weird came in, and they can do that additional protections.
One of the thing that was highlighted in some of the notes that I reviewed was our advertising costs. You know, the things, I mean, yeah, we heard about gas going up and the cost of diesel, and all of our trucks are run on diesel, and hopefully we'll be able to get the supply of diesel. That's another issue. When you're talking about supply chain issues, are we going to be able to get all of the fuel that we need to get us through the winter. But also something like advertising costs. We're mandated legally to advertise, and those costs have gone up. So nothing is sacred. Everything's gone up. Nothing.
Every department that touched it, and Madam Clerk, I know you are one of the bigger users of that advertising budget for all the public notices that have to go in, but planning as well, purchasing as well. Every one of those departments have given me at least 3 revisions on that advertising budget, and then just yesterday, the purchasing director said, I think I'm still going to be short. Because for whatever reason, and this one I'm not going to understand, it's a newspaper. Nothing changed. Why
Cost
did
of
the prices
paper.
go up? Because they can.
Well, the cost of paper, the cost of ink has gone up, and the cost of staffing.
I guess, but theoretically, those things have always gone.
Yeah.
It's all these things that we
argue
can't
with a
control.
printer
It's all these things that we can't control, but we're mandated to do
Yes.
by law. We have no choice, and it really does kind of tie our hands in a lot of areas.
Well, it sort of begs the question, maybe we should be looking at a change in legislation allowing us to minimize the print advertising that's done and be able to do it, on our website. Everything goes up on the website. People are looking, even with the budget, we were sort of erroneously criticized, and there was an apology, but putting the budget up online. People are looking for it online, and so we might want to look at speaking to some of those state legislators and see if there's something they can do to modify it.
There's almost nothing that's done without being online anymore, so it's probably just a matter of time before the
Yeah.
catches up and makes those changes, but it's not a bad question to start asking.
Questions for Joe?
Joe, a question for you. You just made a statement, cut expenses. You know what FIMP is? Firearm to Montauk project? Why do we have $75,000 for erosion district in Robin's Rest?
So in Robin's Rest, that work, the money that's in there is for the crossovers. Doing crossovers that
For the walkways?
were put in, but now we're responsible to maintain. In Robin's Rest, they've had a bunch of boards that have been washed out and eroded, so it's now become a safety issue where there is, and I'm going to make this part up because I don't remember specific, call it a 3-foot drop as you're walking towards the beach.
Okay.
So to redo that entire crossover, extend it to get it built correctly, that's where that number came from.
So the taxpayers in that,
Just that specific
Yeah.
district will
Okay.
pay for that, yes.
and the other thing is about cutting.
I'm sorry, just to correct, that's a capital item. I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yep, got you. I just wanted to make sure, because now my ward is Fire Island.
Okay,
I want
yeah.
to make sure I represent even though beforehand, we all represented the folks in Fire Island. Now it's my ward, so I'm, working with the Fire Island Association and those, and that board just asked a question on that one, so.
Okay, and just so you know, Councilman, I forget who our liaison is in that erosion control district, but they were the ones who approached us, and they said, hey, we need this done. We gave them a couple of different options. They chose this one as the better option. The plan on this one, just to lay all the cards on the table, we're going to issue that as a bond anticipation note, which gives me 5 years to pay it off. Again, have already discussed that with the members of the district, our counterpart over there, and we'll budget the 1/5 payment in the interest every year, and then after 5 years, it'll be done and paid off.
Because we had that issue with the fire service with the Atlantique. So the Atlantique Properties Association get hit with extra taxes for just their services there. So, we have to look, even though a lot of them are seasonal, but just to make sure that we're looking out for their best interests as taxpayers. Yep. The other thing is I want to bring up, and I know as government, it's hard, when we put something in, it's hard to take away. And what I'm pointing out to is the Bayshore Business Development District. Last year, we collected $127,000 worth of taxes, and $116 was payroll. Where's this rest of this money go? I mean, I don't see flowers in pots. How do we get rid of this district now that it's not an organization that's really putting money back in the community, but putting it into a payroll?
Love this question, because I'm going to do the backhand right to the person to your left and have to defer that to the town attorney's office. I'm not 100% sure how we would go about that. I would have to look to see how the district was created. I don't know if Mr. Garbarino knows if a town board can make their own motion to dissolve a district, or if you need the members who voted to become the district have to vote to dissolve. It's a little bit above my pay grade on that one, so I'm not 100%. I don't want to give you bad answers.
My understanding on that particular one, that district was formed by a referendum. I mean, they went out and actually took a vote of those that were going to be in that business improvement district in the downtown area. It was carved out to include some people people that weren't technically in the downtown but would benefit from it, who would be likely to support the creation of a bid. And it was supposed to be to maintain the ambiance of the downtown, have someone, sweep and, empty garbage pails, et cetera. But it was voted on by those people that were going to be taxing themselves. And it really, from my understanding, they would have to convene another vote, if you will, to decide to abandon the bid. But again, I'm not an attorney, so. Okay, but why don't we check on that and get that information to Councilman Cochran? Obviously, it's something that people are starting to talk about.
Okay, we'll, after the meeting, circle back with me and with Eugene in my office, and we'll pull together the information we have, and we can see what we got.
Are there any other questions for Joe while he's up here?
Yes. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'll defer. Okay. My understanding, procedural question, I guess, for, the town attorney and the clerk. There are two separate hearings on today. There'll be two separate presentations and two separate motions. So if I'm wrong, I apologize. That's the way we've done it in the past. Operating first, capital second.
Right.
So I'm going to deal with my questions specifically now on operating. I'll get the capital when we go to capital, okay? So I thank you very much for meeting with me and my robust staff and going over all of these items in these sticky tabs and briefing us. I appreciate that very much, Joe. Thank you for your time in educating us in this budget and on this process. We talked about some of the things that impact the operating budget, and we talked about inflation. My question is related more to both sides of the coin, inflation and the economy. So as the stock market recesses and it's not performing well, does that impact us as it relates to our contributions to the state retirement plan?
So the way the state retirement system works, and first off, I want to thank your robust staff for doing such a good job of going through the budget. She's done it every year that you guys have been here. And as nerdy as it may sound, it actually kind of makes me happy when I see someone actually go through it in that much detail and know that my work was not necessarily wasted. The way the retirement system works, though, it's done on a 5-year rolling average. So let's just say the stock market, or when the stock market did crash back in 2008, I believe it was, and then it had a real sharp increase in 2009. We were paying for that shortfall in 2008 for 5 years. And then once that 2008 number came out of the equation, then our contribution rates had dropped. Many years ago, back in, I believe it was the mid-90s or late 90s, for a while the stock market was doing so well, municipalities were not even required to make a contribution to the retirement system. And a lot of municipalities saw that as an opportunity to not budget retirement costs. It was before I was here at the town, so I'm not sure what we did. I know in Huntington we still budgeted a little bit, just to make sure. And then, what a surprise, with no notice, just like that, hey, everybody's got to make a contribution. And there was a large number of municipalities that did not have the ability to make their contribution because they did not raise any budgets for it. With all that being said, the State Controller's Office has made some changes. There's now a minimum. Now everybody will have to pay, so they'll never go down to zero, so no one ever can be found short again. But to eventually finally answer your question, it is based on a 5-year rolling average. So if the stock market dropped in 2023, depending on when it dropped, because the state's fiscal year ends in March, we may not see that impact until the 24 bill. It might be in the 23 bill, but it would have an impact, like I said, because it is done on a 5-year rolling average.
So let me try and ask the question a better way.
Oh, that means I didn't answer right. I'm sorry.
No, that's what we do. We ask the question until we get the answer we want. What was the impact this year to our contributions for the state retirement system? Was it more or less?
Relatively flat. It was a slight increase, but that's also because salaries go up and things of that nature. It wasn't so much because of the inflation.
And salaries go up based on collective bargaining agreements, so we understand that.
Right.
That's fixed, and that we can budget for. But what we can't budget for is the benefits, the insurance costs for the employees, health insurance. That has gone up. That impacts the operating budget as well, right? So it's not just inflation. It's the impacts of both the inflation and the economy that causes some of the the increases that are required?
I think ultimately the economy has a bearing on every number that goes into the budget, right? When Tom Owen says, hey, I need X number of dollars so I can repair my vehicles, 3 years ago, the cost of a brake pad, Tom, don't yell at me, was $100. Today it's $175. That's all because the economy has made that vendor raise his prices. So whether it's directly impacting us or coming through a vendor that we have to deal with, the economy is always something that has to get looked at, because that is basically what they're paying more for their items, so they're going to charge us more for the same item. It's just a byproduct of the world. The insurance, the health insurance in particular, the big problem we have with the health insurance is Islip, which is our biggest carrier, covers the majority of our health insurance numbers. They used to give us estimates in September, and we could come up with an educated guess. They've stopped doing that for the last 3 years. They'll come out with their estimate next month, which is a little late for us, because hopefully we'll be adopting our budget today. So again, it goes back to that whole crystal ball. I can use the other 2 health insurance companies that we do deal with and kind of use their increases, and they're usually pretty close to each other. Historically, they've all kind of been in that same basic realm, and I use that for my factoring. But obviously, the more employees we have, the higher the health insurance is going to go up. We're not really adding employees to the budget, but we did not cut any. So again, it kind of makes the budgeting for it, I don't want to say easy because of that unknown increase, but it's kind of a known commodity, and then we're just trying to figure out how much of an increase do we want to add to it.
I know in the private sector, health insurance costs for employers are going up. I would expect the same with the town, and I expect that would impact on the operating budget.
Yep, and I believe the number I used was about 8%.
Thanks.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments for Joe while he's up here?
I just have one comment. I had a question regarding the insurance as well, but you did answer it. I just want to thank you for meeting with me and going through the budget, as we have done for the past, 6-7 years as I've been in office, and thank you for the fine work you're doing.
No problem. Like I said, it actually, as lame as it may sound, it warms the cockles of my heart when the council people take the time to go through the budget, because it is amongst one of the more important things you guys are going to vote on, and you have questions or you want to know what's in it, and it's a good show, not show, it's a bad word. It's a good thing when you guys ask the questions and engage in the conversations. The more conversations we can have, and this goes in life in general, the more information you get, the better you guys can make decisions about. So it's a two-way street, and it was always a pleasure working with you, Mary Kate, and again, best wishes in the next round.
Okay. We will now entertain a motion to approve the adjustments to the 2023 preliminary budget and adopt the 2023 operating budget.
I make a motion to close the public hearing, offer the resolution for its adoption.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Councilman O'Connor, second by Councilman Mullen. All those in favor? Opposed? It is approved. Now we will go to the capital budget. Again, are there any specific questions on capital before we go to a motion?
I have a question and a comment, I guess, a follow-up. I defer to my senior colleagues first. Anything? Okay. So, question, Joe. When you presented us last year with the preliminary capital budget, you projected 2022 to 2025. And 2022 last year was requesting 44,320,000, and then showing a flattening in 2023, 2024, and 2025, bringing it back down to 36, 39, and 35. However, when we're presented with this year's 5-year projection, or I guess it's more of a 4-year projection, we see that the 2023 number is not the 36 million that was projected last year, but it's 44 million, in line with, very much in line with what was proposed last year. And we have talked about during the operating presentation the impact of inflation and the economy on what we do operating day to day. Most of this budget walks on 2 feet, and we know that going through this. But the issue is, when we talk about capital, those same impacts of inflation and the economy affect capital as well. And can you explain that? Because when looking at it flat, numbers, just numbers, right? And looking at what you told us last year the 2023 capital request would be versus what it actually is, can you explain the impact of inflation in the economy and why it's back at 44 million?
So there's a couple things. One, when we did the 22 capital budget and we projected out 23 forward, as silly as this may sound, when we do the 23 capital budget, it doesn't mean that what we projected last year is still going to be a project we're going to do this year. So sometimes the projects change. To be fair and to be accurate, again, as I did with the operational budget, quick, can we change? Can we add? I probably had, and that's why I do apologize again. The capital budget came out so late. Every commissioner that had a request gave me additional, we're going to need 20,000 more for vehicles. We're finding out that we can't get them. We can't do this. A great example is the stucco trailers we use at the DEC yards. It used to go for $125,000 a year. We're now projecting, the DEC commissioner is projecting it's going to be just shy of $200,000 for 2023. So just using that as the perfect example, if we had budgeted $125,000 for 23's budget, that number is now 200. And again, that's just the way the economy is. The cost of steel and aluminum and everything else that we're trying to get just keeps going up. And as we talked about on the operational side, it's costing the vendors more, so it's going to wind up costing us more.
So, second, and you might have said it, and I might have missed it, but when you talk about cost of materials, you're talking about paving, and you're talking about the paving increases. To do the same amount of roads, it's just going to cost us more because paving is oil-based. And it's impacted by the economy and the price of oil. Like we talk about when we're trying to put gas in the trucks. It's the same thing when we're talking about when we're trying to pave the roads.
Same exact situation that happened after Katrina. And I remember I was a deputy controller in Huntington at the time, and I remember going to work. I used to pass a gas station every day, and I'm going to make the number up, but you'll understand the point. 3 1/4 at 9 o'clock in the morning. 5 o'clock at night, it was $4.50. Why? Because they knew they could. The point was, everything that is petroleum-based, and you learn it the hard way, everything that's petroleum-based, and it's amazing how many things are petroleum-based, were all impacted by that increase in the gas prices. And we saw it across the board on everything. It's the same situation we're dealing with now. So within the paving budget, let me just take a quick look. I believe we've given the commissioner about the same amount that we put in last year's budget. The reality is he's probably going to get a little bit less done because it's going to cost more to do it. I know, Madam Supervisor, you'd mentioned drainage in particular.
Yeah, I want to get to that as well.
And just real quick, I had a conversation, again, with Commissioner Owens and one of his pseudo deputies, if you would. We were talking about the drainage because I relayed the question you had. And we said, no, you keep that drainage number. They were going to take a look at the area. But he'd mentioned there were 10 spots in the town that were not necessarily low-lying areas down by the water, but were constantly flooded because of rain. With the additional money that the board gave them this year, there are 10 spots that we have not had to go to and pay overtime to pump the water.
Yeah, I mean,
So it doesn't always look sexy and attractive and fun when you see money for drainage, but it's that infrastructure that makes everything else better.
I mean, three of us up here in our, John was talking about the ward system, three of us up here in our districts, we're waterfront, three of the four of us. And the supervisor, of course, is townwide. So every time we have a major weather event, trust me, when there's a full moon and a nor'easter, we hear from our folks who live in the water. We talk about what a great quality of life it is here to live in Islip, and that's our most precious natural resource, but there is a cost that comes with that. And I'm glad you pointed out that it's not just waterfront. Like I know Councilman Gadron sees in his district as well, there are certain areas that just perpetually flood, and it is a drainage issue. So I'm making the appeal. I made it to you privately in our briefing, and I asked you to pass it along to Commissioner Owens. I've spoken with him privately as well, but I'm also doing it publicly to say that in my area of Oakdale, there are significant flooding issues, and I would ask that we really take a hard look at that, particularly from an engineering standpoint, because obviously we can't reverse the impacts of Mother Nature. And I think our residents understand that, and they're willing to accept that, and they'll live with that. But there are engineering things we can do to make sure that the storm drains are draining properly to the bay. I can't control the fact that when the bay is up so high that it's not going to drain. But hopefully we can control the fact that it's not going to go backwards. You know, the bay is not going to go backwards through the storm drains into people's front yards and their driveways and the like. So, again, an appeal. I'm glad to see it in the capital budget. I'm always going to be happy to support it, and an appeal to the commissioner that we always be vigilant when it comes to drainage issues. Personally, again, selfishly, I'm hearing it from the folks in Oakdale, so I want to pass it along.
Sure, and, you know, just as the little commentary for the little bit I know, I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn last night, so I'm certainly not an engineer of any shape. But, you know, and you mentioned it, drainage works well, and we have backflow valves, I think is what they're called, so that the bay water can't come back up. But like you said, when the water comes over the bulkhead and it comes over into people's yards and then goes into the drainage system, there's not much we can do about that. Mother Nature's going to win. She always has, she always will. Certainly Tom and his team will take a look and they'll do whatever they can, but sometimes there's just not much we can do. But I know you've spoken to him, I've spoken to him, and I know they are going to look into that area.
And just to emphasize what has been said, and hopefully to give the councilman and the rest of the members of the board some consolation, understand that they are very sensitive to drainage issues, and it only has been in the last couple of years that it's even appeared as an item in the capital budget as a standalone. Really just highlighting the fact that it is an issue, it is a problem, and there are areas in Brentwood that, you know, persistently flood. Over on First, and they went in there, they repaved, they did, you know, addressed all the drainage issues, and now it's really, really great. And, but it is an area of focus, so thank you for highlighting it.
And again, these are the types of projects, again, they're not the fun projects, it's not the Iron Lake project that we can all go and look at and go swim in the pool, but it does have an operational impact when we don't have to send 5 crews out to pump water for 24 straight hours on overtime and then double time. God forbid it's a holiday, now it's triple time. It's saving us on that back end as well, and now those savings will go, you know, perpetually forward. So it helps in so many different ways, not just quality of life, although that is important. Be the greedy accountant, it helps me on my bottom line. So yes, I think we're all supportive of the drainage issues.
Well, you know, and I think we've really struck a very good balance. We do have the sexy and exciting projects, you know, look at Roberto Clemente Park, for example. That is absolutely magnificent. It's like a country club. Now we're working on Byron, and we're, you know, addressing areas across the town. But again, the you know, issues that, you know, you have to take care of in your home, the leaky roof. You know, this building is a perfect case in point. This roof was leaking for how many years? We finally did the roof. We did the cupola. The cupola was ready to blow off. We really are addressing those things globally, and I really just can't impress upon anybody who's here and listening the commitment from every single member of the town board to making sure that these things are attended to, and that the commissioners and all of the staff really take it to heart and have a tremendous sense of pride in our infrastructure across the town. So
There's 2 more things I just want to mention real quick. Again, kind of following back to your first question, Councilman, as to why there was a change in dollar amount. If you look at it, you'll see in the 23 budget under recreation, there's $15 million for marinas and bulkheads. Normally, $2 million is what they get. But as explained to me, and Madam Supervisor, you could probably explain it better, or we can make Tom come up and he can talk about it. But I believe there's 4 or 5 marinas that are in such a state of disrepair, they are about to fall into the bay, have been neglected for decades. We need to kind of take care of them. And it's not just because we want things to not fall in the bay. We make money off of our marinas. We have boat slips. So if we have a marina goes down, we're losing money then. So again, this is another one of those things that, yes, we have to spend money to make money. So again, the reason why the budget's changed, that was not something that was contemplated last year. So we had a bulkheading study done, and out of that study, I believe, is when they addressed and identified these areas that needed to be looked at. And again, that's why these budgets on the capital, they change so drastically from year to year, because the needs and the desires truly can be one-offs, and everything changes year in, year out.
Joe, I'm glad you mentioned that, because, you know, it all is a process. It all takes time. And we're doing it very logically and systematically and professionally, because with the issue of the marinas and docks, we actually, this town board actually approved a study so that we actually had an engineer go in and assess all of our marinas and docks. And it wasn't just a matter of, you know, Mr. Jones called and complained about the, you know, marina in Bayshore, so let's go fix it. Let's fix the worst first, and that study is enabling us to do that. And hopefully with the adoption of this today, we can finally address some of those issues.
Two more quick things, and I promise I'll stop talking. The only other kind of new thing that's within the capital budget, and again, circling back to your point, we now have a new commissioner of planning. When we sat in the operational budget meeting, she had a line item in there for a master plan. I said, that's a great idea, wrong spot. That goes into the capital. So you'll see the planning's capital budget has increased. I don't remember when the last time a master plan was updated. I'm going to venture a guess to say it was sometime in the 70s.
Yeah, it was close to 50 years ago, and quite frankly, it's embarrassing because we have projects coming forward, and people will say, well, when did you do the master plan? You know, when was your last master plan? So I'm so glad that the commissioner did bring that to our attention, that we're, you know, all supportive of it, you know, just like the Hamlet study
Exactly.
in Bayport. But we need to do things globally as a town and have a blueprint.
Exactly. And again, that's why the numbers will change. And that's the year really is a standalone way of looking at the budget. The last thing I have to say about this, and I'd always put it out there just so everyone is aware, this is not, unlike the operating budget that is now adopted, it's now set in stone, we're going to levy taxes, it is what it is. Capital budget, we have at least one, if not two more wraps at the apple to change, to amend, to decide if we're going to issue debt or not issue debt. Sometime in 2023, I'll be coming before the board, minus you, Councilwoman, and you will be voting on bond resolutions. Those resolutions are going to be based on interest rate market. It may not be the time to go to the market right away. We may have to restrict and lower what we're going to borrow and do maybe first half, second half. But all these conversations will be had again before we make any final decisions that attach a financing source to it. So right now, the capital budget is just a plan. This is what we're thinking of doing in 2023. The actuals will actually come out February, March, and then again, that's when we sit back before the board. You guys can re-ask all these questions, get more pointed questions, because then we'll have more specific projects that we're looking to do, not just the plan, the specifics, and, you know, and then we can have those conversations as well. So don't think that this is the end of this topic. This one will resurface at least once, if not two more times.
Okay, any other questions or comments for the capital? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to close a public hearing and offer the resolution for its adoption.
We have a motion, Councilwoman Mullen, second by Councilman Cochran. All those in favor? Opposed? It is approved. And I believe that is all we have. I will entertain a motion to close the hearing and adjourn.
Make a motion to close the hearing and adjourn.
Motion by Councilman Cochran, second by Councilman Guardione. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you very, very much. And to the department heads, the commissioners, thank you for everything that you did to get us through this process and for the help and cooperation of Town Board. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Happy birthday to Marine Corps.
Happy birthday.